And here we are. No technical difficulties this time. We've got Deanna Minich, one of my absolute favorite teachers, mentors, friends. You know, Deanna, I can't tell you, every time I think of all the times that I see you on Facebook trying to connect with other people in your tribe, like wherever you are, Deanna is traveling all over the place, speaking, lecturing, teaching all over. And you really make it a point to connect with the people that you know and teach. And I really respect that. I'm so excited that you could make this summit. And Deanna, if anyone doesn't know Deanna Minich, you have to, you got to put her on your radar. Let me give you the Reader's Digest version of what she's all about. She is a holistically minded health educator and author with more than 20 years of experience in nutrition, mind, body, spirit health, medical science, and functional medicine. Dr. Minich holds a master's and doctoral degrees in nutritional and medical sciences and has lectured extensively throughout the world on health topics, teaching patients and health professionals. She's a fellow of the American College of Nutrition and a certified nutritional specialist, a certified functional medicine practitioner, and a registered yoga teacher. Currently, Dr. Minich teaches for the Institute of Functional Medicine and for the graduate program in functional medicine at the University of Western States. Her passion is bringing forth a colorful, whole self approach to nourishment and bridging the gaps between science, soul, and art and medicine. She has published 6 books on health and wellness and over 40 scientific publications. If you want to put her on your little radar, it's www.deannaminich.com. And of course, I'll post that in the notes here. 6 books. Deanna, I think I've read all of them except for A to Z food additives.
Good, because that one's a bit outdated.
This one I refer to all the time.
Yeah.
Tons and tons of beautiful notations, and it's not about just the food, of course. Nothing is about just one thing, right? I love when you always say, you know, how you eat is how you live.
Yeah,
That's a big.
Very true. So thank you for that warm introduction, Kat. And it was such a pleasure to meet you in person during one of my travels. And you've been part of my practitioner community. You've been part of many of the different communities that talk about eating and living a more colorful life. And that's what we're here to talk about as part of your summit. So I'm excited to dive in.
Deanna, tell the audience, if you would, your story about how you came into this nutritional the nutritional realm that's not only just nutrition. You know, you have the art, the yoga, all of that. How did that come to fruition to where you are right now?
You know, I think that all of us, we get into this field in some way because we have a personal crisis. We have something that goes awry in our health, and it leads us down this path of looking for the truth, like what is going to work. So when you find that one thing works kind of well, but not completely, then it leads you into, well, maybe I should try this and this and this. And so for me, being a nerdy scientist, my go-to was always, what is physical? What is matter? Is it a medicine? Is it food? Is it a dietary supplement? So really starting from that place of just getting my biochemistry right, and then feeling like, well, maybe physical biochemistry is not the one answer for every condition. Maybe we have to go outside the box. And that's where that book that you showed, The Complete Handbook of Quantum Healing, really was part of my own personal trajectory of looking at other things like emotional health, mental health. You know, maybe we need to explore things like herbal tinctures or flower essences. Maybe we need to work with an energy healer, a shaman. I actually studied with a shaman for 2 years here in Seattle, and that really made an impact. It allowed me to expand my awareness of what was possible. We can look at physical activity and movement in different ways. It doesn't even have to be the traditional kinds. And then, you know, there's also this realm of the mind. I would say it's probably most captured in that way, you know, body, mind, or mind, body medicine. So looking at things like visualizations or meditation, I think that those are really big deals. And in fact, I've worked with a medical doctor. When I was doing research in grad school, one of the things that he would do with his patients with cancer was not only the food part, but also the mind part. And when I was interviewing them as part of a research project, what seemed most impactful for these people was truly the mind part, you know, to think that they actually had locus of control over their bodies, that they could connect to their immune system, that they could rewire, refire just by having the intention rather than think that they are a victim or that it's something from the outside. So to me, it's like an in and outside world. It's east and west. It is feminine, masculine. It's right brain, left brain. It's creative as much as it is physical. So that's what I really tried to embody with this whole food and spirit approach, which is a very holistic operating system, so that we don't just look at what's happening to us in one way. It's really multidimensional, and perhaps we need to look at different facets of our being in order to get to that place of healing.
Mm-hmm. It's like we have to think colorfully.
Yeah, I mean, and if we can't think colorfully because we don't feel so colorful, you know, wearing color, surrounding ourselves with colorful experiences and really making that happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to think that it's so powerful. Carolyn Myss and others have talked about one of the biggest parts of healing is about choice, making the decision to think a different thought, to have a different emotion, to wear different clothing, to be around different people. Mm-hmm. All of those things are the sum of who we are.
Right, right. So you talk about color so much in all of your books and all of your writing. How did you, do you think that you came into that as an artist, or did that start in you and from there did you progress into your art? What came first for you?
I think that in my moments of when I felt the most low and the most depressed and the most anxious and the most stressed, and this was during the latter half of my 20s when I was working on my PhD, there was a lot of work put in, not a lot of fun. And I felt that I was dipping low. It's like, wow, shouldn't I be at like the top of my game? I'm almost done with my academic trajectory, but no. And so during that moment of stress, I began painting and I began opening up my vision broader. And I think it came to me just out of necessity for survival. It was like, this is what I needed in order to pull myself out of the rut of how I was seeing life. And so I began looking for color in my environment. Things became more technicolor, more vivid, and I began painting very vivid colors. And I would surround myself in the small room that I lived in. I would just plaster these paintings all over the place, and I felt like I was being fed by them. So through the years, what happened was every time I was feeling emotional or contemplative, I would find myself painting. I would pull out a canvas. And I continue to, you know, have some different health crises along the way. Nothing major. I definitely was pulled out of that emotional ditch. But I remember it was my husband who graciously said to me that he thought I was painting my body parts, my uterus, my ovaries, and putting it all over the house. And those were the organs that I was struggling with the most. And so once he said that, it was like something unlocked within me. And then I was thinking, wow, what if my body is trying to communicate this stress and trying to show me a different path? And so then I started to intentionally paint. I would create these energetic, very vivid, swirling paintings, you know, and I've had no training in painting. I just get messy in that process. I just put my hair up in a ponytail. I put on comfortable clothing, I put on music, and I just start painting. And I feel it's like a catharsis. So when you ask, when did this artist self emerge? And by the way, I believe that we all have inner creatives and that we have 7 of them, at least 7. And this was the creative that I call the flowing creative, because it was the emotional creative. It was the one that needed to get up and out and flow. And so the paintings were actually a medium that helped me to flow. You know, paints are liquid. So it was perfect for that. Mm-hmm. And I do think that creativity is missing in people's healing paths. And if we could just tap into whatever that creative was and have that discussion, have that dialogue, be intentional, nourish that creative archetype within us, we might see some different effects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautifully said. So you talk a lot about the chakras and otherwise known as the seven systems.
Mhm.
And so how do you teach that? And so to promote healing of the entire body, all of the physiology and the mind, the body, the spirit. How is it that you teach balancing those systems to promote true healing?
Yeah. So the way I thread it together is basically through this colorful chart. It's the operating system that you're very familiar with. So I have books, I have quizzes that people take to see where they fare in a number of these different categories. Red is, and really, what are the chakras? The chakras are places of our body that were recognized by ancient traditional medical systems where there's a lot of activity. These are the endocrine systems, the neuroendocrine systems, which tap into our psychological sphere. So the red is all about our survival. It's the adrenal glands, red foods, protein, things that are stabilizing. Orange is all about reproductive health. It's the ovaries, the testes, fats and oils, orange colored foods rich in carotenoids. The yellow is all about our digestion. And this is the part of us that is burning out. And so no wonder we reach for simple carbohydrates and sugars to try to replete that center. But there are healthy yellow foods that can help to provide a prebiotic effect or even different neuroactives like serotonin. Green is all about the heart. And so if we look at green leafy vegetables, we can even see a little mini circulatory system there. And we know that green leafy vegetables are rich in nitrates, they're rich in folates, they're rich in vitamin K1 or phyloquinone, all of which help in the proper blood flow and circulation of the heart. We have aquamarine, which is thyroid health. So it's not just nourishing the thyroid with sea plants and iodine and selenium, vitamin A, so many different things for this space, which can be repleted through sea plants. But then also, how do we speak our truth? How are we birthing our heart's passions? Each of these different systems have a literal or a physiological and a metaphorical or a symbolic aspect. The indigo is the brain. So it's all about our mood, our wisdom, our intuition, and how we sleep, and even blue-purple foods that help with learning and memory. And then the top one there, which is lavender, or sometimes I put it as lavender, but really it's more white, right? It's clearing, it's non-physical, it's the spiritual part of us that doesn't require food. And this is where I think societally, we come into certain trends that coincide with these seven systems. And I feel like societally, if you look at the trending on intermittent fasting, time restricted feeding, we are working in the physical with a lot of more of the spiritual or the pulling away of the physical matter substances, which I think is interesting. And that could be very healing for some people.
It sure can. Deanna, can I throw you a little curveball here?
Please, I love
Yeah,
curveballs.
yeah. So where would black fit in? For instance, what's been really popular right in the last few, you're hearing a lot about or reading a lot about, is using charcoal.
Yeah.
How does that fit in for you?
Yeah, it fits into the lower part. So the red part, the red is not just adrenals, but it's also insoluble fibers. And sometimes what I do is I put earth tones down here, like the black binders, like you're mentioning, the activated charcoal. I just took some of that yesterday, as a matter of fact. But if it is present in a berry, so let's just say black, where a berry is so blue that it's black, it would go up into the upper part here because it's actually within that spectrum of a blue, but it's so dark that it looks black. So there's a little bit of a difference, but something that has properties of being very physical, you have to look at the functional properties.
Right.
Right. So activated charcoal. Yes. Charcoal coming from the earth, and it's binding, it's pulling, it's drawing us down. This is the lowest system. So we are pulling that down. But if it's berries, something, just quickening, it has different functions. It's in the skin. It works in a different way than we would put that up here. But all the colors actually, even brown for a second, just to mention brown. Sometimes brown fits into the earth tones down here with the red. Sometimes brown fits into yellow because there's a spectrum of like tan and beige. So we typically see that with legumes or whole grains,
Right.
where they do have fibers, but then they do have a lot of the complex carbohydrates. So many of the foods are shared by these different systems. And I talk about that in my Rainbow Diet book. You know, it's not that everything in nature fits in a box.
Right.
Many times there's a lot of crosstalk, but in general, if we can understand the function of a food, and then we put that together with the color, we can kind of figure out which system it might be helping with.
Right, right. That's where your whole total body spectrum comes in. I love when you talk about spectrum. You know, I mean, so many of my clients will come in just desiring to work on one thing and one thing
Right.
alone. By the time, you know, that 50 minutes is done, they kind of understand it's not about one thing. It's not about, you know, just portion control. It's about what's underneath all that. Why is there this thing about something? It's really interesting.
Well, Kat, you're definitely onto something, because I think that that's how we've been trained to think in society, right? It's like, what is the pathway? That's how we were taught in school, is in pathways, A to B, B to C, rather than looking at how A influences B, influences A, influences C. And we know that the body is a web. And so if we just work on one system, like let's just say out of all these colors, we have the most symptoms. Let's just go with the yellow one, which is the gut. And many people do. You're going to see a ripple through effect into the adrenals, into the immune system. I mean, the gut is the seat of the immune system for the most part. 60 to 70% of our immune system is there. You're going to change reproductive health. You're going to change cardiovascular. So basically, this is all connected. You just have to pick the portal. Where do you feel most called? What color draws you in? Where are your greatest imbalances? And from there, it's a doorway into your whole being.
Right, right. So for any of your clients that you see, I mean, I don't even know if you're still seeing clients. Are you still seeing patients? And
much less than I have been in the past. Now what I'm doing is more group sessions where people come together online. And so doing it in that way.
Yeah, and I imagine people who are attracted to your online programs are pretty well versed in eating and living colorfully. But let's say you are going back to where you started and people are really struggling to get color into their daily living. Where do you start with them?
Yeah, you make it a game, you make it art. I think that so many people, like you said, they're already aware that they need to be eating more fruits and vegetables. It's just, how do you get there? So one thing is just gamifying it. So having a tracker where you just look at the colors that you're eating every day. So the beautiful colors that you have behind you. So
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the synthetic artificial dyes. I'm talking about the whole natural colors that nature provides. And so, you know, just tracking them, and rather than thinking of calories or fat grams or carbohydrate grams, you know, just getting into the metrics, just focusing on, okay, reflecting at the end of the day, did I have my blue purple foods? No, tomorrow I'm going to do better. I mean, you can do this with kids. There are great checklists where you put it on the refrigerator, and then for everybody in the family, they can track their colors that day. So that's one way. And that's really easy, because, you know, you can think of, well, I can make a smoothie in the morning that can give me like 5 colors. So if you know that you're going to be eating brown, yellow, and white throughout the day, it's like, how do I ensure that I'm getting those nutrient dense foods with great variety? So that's why, as part of the whole detox program, I build in a smoothie that is nutrient dense. And then you have the other remaining 2 meals of the day.
Yeah. And what are your recommendations on particulars? So let's say on the leafy greens or on the blues and purples. What do you, when people ask you that, what do you tell them?
So in terms of amounts, or, you know, because usually I just want people to get them in. So usually I talk about handfuls. So when it comes to leafy greens, I talk about 1 handful of leafy greens, and bringing that into, you can do it to a smoothie, you can bring it as part of a salad. Just 1 handful is a nice serving. I mean, a serving is about a cup. So usually if you're taking 1 nice handful of greens, you at least have a serving, what counts as a serving. When it comes to blue purples, often people think of berries, especially blueberries. And so thinking of, if you look at the studies on blueberries, the animal studies would suggest that humans need about 1 scant handful of blueberries in order to have some similar effects on learning and memory. So I try not to get people into like measuring spoons and measuring cups. But it has to be something appreciable so that, but that said, I take that back because even things like spices will count,
Yeah.
right? And so making sure that we put spices on our meals, that we put them in our smoothies, that we put them on stir fries. I mean, that all counts as well. And spices are very concentrated
Right.
phytonutrients.
People are always so shocked at that information, and they love it.
Yeah.
They think, oh, that's so simple. And then it kind of makes them reflect also about all the old stuff that they have in their pantry, all that. And it's so sad.
True.
All the volatile oils are just completely, they're dying in there from those old shilling bottles, right?
It's so true.
I get so excited when I take them shopping, like, oh my gosh, all the color spectrum and all the different combinations. And I always tell people, get like a couple of different, just like spice, like a Latin spice, an Asian spice, and just make it easy. Right?
Yeah.
In taking 80 different spices and then not using them.
It's true. Or sometimes I talk about like the 5 main spices. If they can just get like oregano, dill, cinnamon, turmeric, which I like, and ginger, so then you get your anti-inflammatory, your high antioxidant spices. And those are the common ones that are used in mainstream eating, and people are most familiar with them. And they're also pretty well studied. I mean, turmeric having the pharmacological activity of probably like dozens of different agents, right? So these are really potent substances in many ways.
And you talk about turmeric. Would you, in your research, have you found that turmeric is more bioavailable when you take it in as a spice or as a supplement?
Well, it depends. There are 2 different formats. So when it's a spice, it is the root that has been dehydrated and pulverized, and now you've got a powder, and you don't have controlled amounts of any one particular active. Mm-hmm. If you take a supplement, it is a standardized amount of a particular active, usually like curcumin. So usually people think of curcumin when they think of turmeric because it's one of the actives. And if you want to ensure potency for certain things like reducing pain or reducing inflammation, you might want to be thinking about a more therapeutic level of a spice. So even something like, all of the different spices would have different actives that could be standardized into a supplement. And that's why supplements are more expensive. So if people don't have the funds to have a more expensive supplement, at least what they could do is start bringing in that spice into their everyday life. That's not insignificant.
Right, right. So you talk about buying supplements. That's a big question that I get a lot is how do you ensure what you're getting is really what you really need, right?
Yeah.
I always tell people, I hate to say this, but not to really, first of all, trust your qualified practitioner. Be careful of what you're getting online, unless it's, somewhere where it's a certified type of organization. But looking at Amazon, you have to be really careful of what you're getting. What do you think about buying supplements online? What is your general practice?
Well, I spent about a decade in the supplement industry, so I have some sense of what the practices are, whether it's quality control, and there's a whole spectrum on supplements. You could have kind of your fly-by-night companies that don't do a lot of quality testing. You might get different amounts than what you see on the label. There might be claims for that product that haven't been verified. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have companies that they do things like third-party testing. Third-party testing means that they will send batches of their supplements to independent labs, get them tested to ensure that they're actually meeting their label claim. And then they're also falling under the guise of the FDA in terms of what they're saying about the product to be sure that it's connected to the science of that product. So I think you get what you pay for, right? And so if you're buying fish oil at a mainstream store and it seems like, oh, this is really inexpensive, you could actually be getting a very, inexpensive product, but with a price. And that price could mean that you're taking in other things, other toxins or other contaminants that haven't been tested for. So you don't want to do that because you're thinking that you're taking that for your health. And that's why you want to be taking it. So sometimes it requires a little bit more investment. I like your guidance of checking with your healthcare practitioner because you may or may not need certain supplements. find out what you need, get some basic tests. And from there, make sure that your practitioner is giving you some quality supplements. And practitioners have keyed into different companies that are selling these types of quality products.
Right, right. So, I don't know where you're off to next, because you are always, every time I see you, you're somewhere exotic or somewhere really interesting at some conference or teaching. With all the travel that you do, what are like 3 main practices that you have to ensure that you keep your body balanced? Because you always seem really present. You seem, your capacity for remembering things is just always right on. I mean, you're a textbook of stuff that
I don't know about that.
you keep yourself, mind, body, spirit, your brain, your gut, all of this stuff as you travel so frequently. What are your 3 big tips for that?
So my non-negotiables are 2, sleep and food. And then the third one would be hydration and supplements. I'm going to put 2 into 1 because they are both really important. So sleep is really important. We all know that. The power of sleep determines how we eat the next day. It controls our cravings. It's part of the detox process of the brain. And if we're not allowing enough time to rejuvenate the brain, we're not going to think as well. We get a greater buildup of beta amyloid, and we don't want that. And so it's so important. Sleep is the 21st century medicine. So ensuring adequate sleep and whatever you need to do that. I don't take melatonin or a lot of these sleep aids. My process for making sure I get the right sleep is wherever I'm at, I adhere to that time zone. I take a warm shower before bedtime just to feel relaxed, feel in the flow. I don't use technology before bedtime. When it comes to food, I build in time to my schedule to be sure that I can go to a grocery store to buy foods. And I must say, things like Whole Foods or Sprouts, these are the type of stores where no matter where I travel, I can find them. They're kind of like my McDonald's. So I make sure I go there. I know the foods that I can have. They're steady eddies for me. So I get those foods. I make sure that my hotel room has a refrigerator. I make the time for it, because if I don't make the time for it and I eat on the fly, there's no way I could have a continental breakfast at the hotel. I mean, that is just going to amp up my blood sugar and make me feel terrible the whole day. So I need to make an investment in myself in the way of food. Right. And then lastly, I do have a number of different dietary supplements that I take with me on the road, and I put them in a baggie. Different things, sometimes it's lysine to help me with my immune system. Sometimes I'm taking zinc to, again, I'm always thinking of immunity when I'm traveling, because you don't know what your exposures are. And especially now with so many viruses out there, people contracting things, wearing masks. It's like my way of doing this is from the inside as best I can. Of course, you take precautions and you wash your hands well and all of that, but really making sure that you've bolstered your inner reserves. And so I do think about certain supplements. Vitamin D is so important. I could go on and on, but I do have a mixed baggie of different things that I make sure that I bring with me. And most times I have to take more of things when I'm traveling. Yeah. And of course, water. Water is the last one. And I like to bring a glass water bottle with me when I'm traveling, because I just fill it up. I go to the gym in the hotel room, or in the hotel that I'm staying at. I'll go to the gym because usually that's where you find a purified water station. And I just make sure I always have a lot of water when I'm traveling. It's so important.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love what they're doing at certain hotels where they have the big dispenser of these water bottles and you fill them up constantly. I think that's brilliant.
Oh, I know. It's like, why didn't we do this before? It's so important. Yeah. And to not feel safe in your environment because you're not sure of the water is really a very difficult place to be in. It makes you feel like you're on alert. Right. Like you feel like you're being threatened, like, oh, what am I taking in? Am I taking in too much chlorine in this water? Is there arsenic in this water? And it's like, you want to save that headspace for other things. And so making sure that you've got, and if I can't, for some reason, there's, I buy water in a glass container, like even at Whole Foods, or I buy it in a UHT non-plastic coated type of container.
That's absolutely fantastic. I love those tips. I'm just curious how many supplements you take. Do you have a ballpark?
We had kind of a discussion on this. I think on a daily basis, quite honestly, it does vary. But if I think of today, let me just think of today and like kind of, because morning is like when I take the most. And so there's usually a small handful that I have together with my breakfast. If you're talking an absolute number, maybe like 10,
Yeah.
but that could mean like 3 of something. Like I take 3 of lysine and I take 2 of vitamin D. So it's, you know, for some things I'm actually taking more than one thing.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah. And
yeah.
you're someone who eats really well, you know, because a lot of times I'll have a consultation with someone and give them some ideas on supplements. And when they hear how many it is, and I truly do not, I believe food first, but sometimes
Yeah.
people need more support and they're just like, you know, but we do need certain supplements, right?
The biggest thing I think about is toxic exposures. I mean, our planet is not like it was 50 years ago where we could just grow our food, get things from our diet 100%. The soil is different. It's contaminated. The food doesn't contain the same nutrient density. And we've got different contaminants in the food, air, and water. We've got mercury now in fish and in air and in water. We've got arsenic. We've got a lot of these heavy metal contenders. We've got plastics. We have microplastics in the water supply. There are pharmaceuticals in the water. You know, I tend not to talk about these things because they just evoke a lot of fear, but we aren't living in the same time space reality that we were decades ago. And so that for some of us, it requires that we equip our bodies better and that we get to know our bodies, you know, working with a practitioner who understands genes, gene variants, because for some of us, we can't get these things out of the body. No, not everybody detoxes the same way, right? So it's really important to know what you're working with. Like if you have a methylation insufficiency, if you're low in glutathione just naturally because your body doesn't make enough of it, then you need to accommodate by bringing in certain nutrients that will bolster your reserves. Otherwise, you'll always feel like you're at a shortfall. Right. That no matter what you do, you always fall short. And it's like, why is this? I thought I was eating a good diet. Well, you are. You most likely are. But it's because of all the other things that we're confronted with. And it's just our reality, unfortunately. And all we can do is our best.
You said it. So you actually have a real generous gift for the listeners here. You want to let us know about that?
You bet. So we just prepared, this took some time last year to put it together. It's a 48-page guide. It's called The Healing Power of Color. So for all the talk about color that we just had, this is a great e-booklet for people to get going. And it's not only a booklet, it's interactive. I like things that are practical and applied. So it's a guidebook. People can write their thoughts about different colors. And I take them on the experience of all these different colors as they go through the guidebook.
I love it. I love it. What a great introduction that you can give someone to you and what you offer. There's so much out there that you do. Deanna, I want to tell you this was a lot of fun, and I am so happy that you made the time to come visit us today.
You bet. My pleasure, Kat.
Yeah, I did see your little kitty cat at some point going behind the screen there. That was so cute.
I bet you'll get comments on it. I once did a YouTube video where, you know, I'm talking and my cat jumps up. The most comments I got on that whole video was just that my cat Simon had jumped on my lap. So
we love our animals. We really do.
Exactly. No, this has been great. Thank you so much for having me on the summit. And I already know it's going to be successful. Anytime that you're connecting gut, brain, and helping people on this path, it's worth something, and people really see the value and meaning of it.
Absolutely. And you've been a really great help to show people that whole thing. So thank you again, and wishing you a great weekend, Deanna.
You too. Enjoy the celebration with your mom.
Thank you. Yeah, my mom is turning 90 tomorrow.
Yay!
Super excited about that. All right. So we will see you on the next Inner Wisdom Brain, Heart, Gut plan. And we will hope to see you the whole 21 days. See you then.